Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the members of this committee. We'll start on my far left. We have the chairwoman for JGO, Representative Selena Babalta. To her right, we have Representative Leila Staffler, the chairwoman for education. To her right, we have Representative Christina Sablan, the chairwoman for health and welfare. And then to her right, we have Representative Sheila Babalta, the chairwoman for education. Moving over to my far right, we have Representative Richard Lizama. He is the chair for PUTC. To his left, we have Representative Denita Yanktamai, the chairwoman for commerce and tourism and cannabis. And then to her left, we have Representative Vicente Camacho, the chairman for federal and foreign affairs. With 8 members present, including myself, that constitutes a quorum to conduct today's budget hearing. Assisting the committee, we have members of the Legislative Bureau. Over to my right, we have our legislative assistants, Cameron Nicholas and Giovanna Taitano. We have our fiscal analyst, Mr. Tom Rabago, our fiscal analyst, our legal counsel, Joe Tyrone, our IT specialist, Jonathan Diaz, and Sergeant at Arms, Pete Tuat. With that, members, can I get a motion to adopt today's agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item. Opening statement of the chair. Good afternoon again, Commissioner, and to members of your team. The committee is here today to go over the governor's submission, his proposal of how the general fund is allocated, as well as the American Rescue Plan, which is found in volume 4. And as well as to discuss your submission, and should there need be additional requests, this would be the best time to ask for the members' support as well as their indulgence in how we can assist the agency. Well, the current proposal with both the general fund and the ARPA, it looks like DFEMS is actually getting a little over what their initial request was. However, things changed since then, and so if there's anything additional, if there's additional requests that you have, we certainly love to hear from you guys. But before we proceed on to the questioning, I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to you, Commissioner, and to introduce your team and any opening remarks you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning to this great body. I'm going to introduce my team. To my left, we got Chief of Logistics, Captain Manny Cabrera. To his left, we got Chief of Operation, Chief Pua. We got DFEMS Prevention Office, Captain Stanley Santos to my right. We got Administration Chief, which is Captain Sasamoto to his right. We got EMS Office, Chief Blas or Captain Blas, and then Logistics OIC officer in charge is JRAM. Really, we don't really, because we had an increase. Our initial request was really just to sustain our operation for the next year. We'd like to thank the governor for the infusion of the ARPA funds, which we are really satisfied with. I think this budget will give us enough funding to push the department forward for the next year. I know everybody's already tracking at this point about our revolving funds, so we normally use our revolving funds for all our projects and stuff. So with this, we really don't have any additional requests on this funding.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. You mentioned revolving fund. Do you know what your balance is as of, or what's the latest report that you have on your?
We're looking about over 800,000 in revolving funds.
How much has DFEMS been able to pull in this current fiscal year in your revolving fund?
I can get that number to you. I don't have the exact number.
And as far as the 800, are any of those obligated for other projects?
So we got about 304 obligated already for our projects currently.
And that will be taken off out of the 800, or that's?
Yes.
How many currently, how many FTEs do you have?
I have 124 FTE.
How much have you lost in the current fiscal year?
FTE? We didn't lose any FTE.
But I'm seeing that you are requesting for 150.
So through this ARPA fund, they were able to give us an additional FTE so we can meet our threshold, which is 150 personnel.
So fiscal year 2021, according to the Planning and Budgeting Act, you were allotted 147 for this fiscal year. Prior to that, fiscal year 2020, you were allotted 151. So I just wanted to see how you went from 150 to 124.
So during the austerity, they just kind of seized on the 24 additional FTE. They never put funding on it. So we never really lost the FTE. They just never funded it. So on this, they just restored back the 25 additional or 26 additional FTEs.
During the furlough period, has any of those FTEs been transitioned over to any federal grants that the department is receiving?
No, we did not.
And with the news of an upcoming academy, how many cadets are you planning to bring along?
So for Saipan alone, we're looking at 35.
So the additional, because the governor only proposed 147, the remaining will be covered how?
So we have some vacancies that we never filled. So that'll be covering the rest. We also have an additional funding from the OIA, which is the 16 federal funded FTEs. That'll give us 2 years.
Just a few more before I hand it over to the members. For the current fiscal year, do you have a report on how much in overtime has been incurred?
I don't have an exact number right now on overtime.
Any recent data, if not up until today?
No,
for the first quarter?
No, I don't. Not at this time. So let me go back a little bit. Before COVID, during COVID, we shut down all of our operations overtime. But then after the austerity was lifted, we were able to push more of our force out and man all the programs that we have. So we started incurring a little bit more overtime than we did in the past. But I don't have the exacts on that. I can probably just, when we get down to the office, I can get that for you.
So prior to the lifting of the austerity, no overtime?
We weren't accumulating overtime. Most of it was just under COVID pay. So any additional overtime was covered under COVID.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. The floor is now open. I recognize Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Commissioner and staff. My first question has to do with training. I did take some time to review at least the 2020 citizen-centric report. I couldn't find the 2021 yet, maybe it's not ready yet, but one of the priorities that's listed is to identify and prioritize personnel training and provide management and communications training for supervisors. And I was just curious why there's, like, even the division of training has 0 for training. I couldn't find much of a training budget in any of the divisions at the department. Could you just talk about what resources do you have for training? Is that funded somewhere else?
No, it's to our revolving funds. So a lot of the additional training that we use funding for is really just our revolving funds. We rely heavily on it just because we weren't given any training funds. So when we shift people for training or do any annual certification, we use this funding for that.
I see. And what is your anticipated budget then for training this year?
This year, so
For this, yeah.
just certification alone, we're looking at 60,000 just to certify the entire department as far as their EMT certification, bringing in an instructor. So that alone, we're looking at 60,000. So that's my anticipation. Yeah, that's the annual training that's required.
And you have sufficient funds in the revolving fund to cover that?
If you can give me more, then that'd be great.
Okay. Well, I just noticed that there wasn't a department request for training funding either, right? So if, we're aware that the administration is preparing a revised budget submission. Yeah. So if you do need more resources for training, this would be a good time to ask for that.
I do need more resources for training. We're planning on just another academy just because we lost more personnel, but at this point, I'm working with the administration on what's fair for the department and what we can manage, until such time where we get an influx of funds and we can get supplemental funding.
Yeah.
So,
well, we are expecting a massive influx of funds this year. So, ask for that. Okay. And sorry, and I interrupted you. You were saying that there are other types of trainings besides the EMC certification.
So they do normally. But this is really not costly because the leadership, or I want to say training section, comes down to our operation and conduct in-service training. So those are really not, it doesn't require a lot of resources, it just requires manpower.
I see. Is that primarily what your division of training does?
Yes, it's, yes.
Okay. And then I was also curious about your repair and maintenance budget. Could you talk a little bit about that? You do have ambulances and fire trucks, everything's in good working order. Do you have a regular maintenance schedule? And what does
we don't have a regular maintenance schedule. What we do is we're in the process of hiring a trades technician to manage that part, but logistics has been doing really well with trying to, ensure that our fleet is up to par as far as lifespans for the vehicle. So next fiscal year, we're looking at replacing or possibly asking for new ambulance, because of the lifespan of the ambulance.
What is the lifespan of an ambulance?
5 years. So we're looking at 5 years, every 5 years, just wear and tear, damages on the ambulance.
Wow, every 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and the same goes for your other vehicles?
Yes. Well, not the service vehicle. This is just mainly the ambulance because that's the one responding normally. So other vehicles, we can last us for 10 years. We got some fleet that are 2001 model. So with good maintenance program, we're able to make them last long. But of course, eventually it's going to come to its.
So I'm curious then, what would it take to have a good maintenance program? What would something like that cost? You mentioned bringing on a trades technician.
Yes.
You don't currently have a mechanic?
We don't have a mechanic, and we're spending a lot of money on just sending these vehicles to shops, doing contracts or POs and all that stuff.
Sure.
So I think the plan that the logistics division came up with is to just hire a trades technician that focuses solely on just the maintenance of all our fleets.
Okay. And what is your estimated
We
for that?
Estimated costs for
a good maintenance program.
If I can get the vehicle service every 3 months, parts, wear and tear, you're looking at probably, I want to say, 20,000 every quarter.
Okay, and that's covering road and Indian also?
No, this is just
like that.
side.
40,000 a quarter?
Yeah.
Would that be part of your revised budget request?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. Floor is now open. I recognize Rep. Sama.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome again. We visited your area before, and one of the issues that was brought up, I'm going around with pages and pages to see where do you come with a budget, what kind of budget do you come with for the uniform? The most important, especially the fire assistance uniform. Will you be able to cover that?
So what we're doing is we're going through other entities for our uniform costs. So currently we got NMHC, who's just given us funding for over $485,000 and part of it is the PPE, which is the bunker gears, the turnout gear. So we're availing to grants and other stuff, which we're actually anticipating a lot of it. Currently we got 30 sets on the way, and then we also are anticipating another 50 on top of that. So there is a plan.
And there is a process.
There is a process. It's the longest process is pretty much just the meeting the specs. So we put out an ITB for a specific bunker gear, but these guys have to make sure that the specs, because it's it has to meet the standards. So that's the process.
And the weather.
And weather, all this stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'll give that one also. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Lama. I actually just want to add on to his line of questioning. Again, thank you for the previous tour that you offered to members and sharing some of the challenges and requests that you had. I know some of the requests included, in addition to the gear, was like the machine, the washing machine, or what do you call it? I mean,
the industrial washing machine.
Yeah. And so you had a list, and so I just wanted to find out if everything or most of what you had on your list are being addressed through ARPA or other sources of funding?
Not necessarily all to ARPA, but some of it are through ARPA. Like we're requesting, we've already wrote a letter to the administration for new vehicles, the SCBA refilling station. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we're addressing them. Just we're trying to hit them based on precedence or priority.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And one last question again before I recognize Rep. Staffler. Has there been any discussion yet on premium pay?
Premium pay?
Yes.
Actually, on our previous discussion, I was hoping that there would be introduction for hazardous pay and night differential, and standby pay, but that's really a legislation that needs to come down to us.
Right. No, but in regards to the premium pay that is included in the ARPA,
premium pay,
the funds set aside to provide premium pay to frontliners.
I have not discussed that with the governor yet.
There might be more about that later. For now, I recognize Rep. Staffler.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for joining us today. And I do echo the appreciation that we got to see all of the different stations that you have. I even got to visit the Tinian station as well. And it's a testament to the work you guys do, how much we do need to reinvest into the department so that you guys have what you need to do the very important work. So I'm glad you asked that question, colleague, about the bunker gear. I couldn't remember what it was called. I remember someone telling me that it should be that everyone has 2 suits each. Would that be what is included in your grant?
So initially, we're just trying to complete one for everybody. So currently, our bunker gear are not to standard. So we're trying to replace the current one. And once we get past that hurdle, then we can start working on the second set.
It is very expensive.
It is very expensive, roughly about $4,000 each.
And the turnover you have, what do you do with the gear if a person, quit?
We normally send it to training, or logistics just holds on to it. But for the most part, we just try and keep it we use it for training and, use it for like academy.
Okay. So one of the other things that was mentioned, and I noticed it is in here, but I just wanted to be sure it was adequate, that there's a food budget for your 24-hour shifts so that people are not having to take from home. Is that something that's also?
No, we provide the fire department with kitchen and so place to stay. So these guys and refrigerator, they can bring their food and cook it at the station. Unless there's an emergency, then the logistics is activated to provide them food.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I was actually curious about logistics. When the DPS was here, I asked them about the forklift that's down at the dock. Is that belong to this department? Not this logistics,
No.
A different logistics. Okay.
We can use a forklift.
You could use, so add it to your budget.
I'll add it to our budget.
I wondered what you use to rent vehicles for in logistics. Like what kind of vehicles do you need to rent?
So depending on our projects, it ranges from cranes to depending on what we're doing, but just our day-to-day operation, there's nothing that big that requires a forklift to, but if we have to move something, then we normally just try and rent it out.
Okay, just curious. And I guess I will yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Staffler. And then just going back briefly to premium pay, according to the Secretary of Finance's presentation, last Friday, under Section 602B, part of the ARPA funds can be used to recover government costs for the premium pay extended to first responders performing essential work in responding to public health emergency for the fiscal years 2021 and 2022. And there was about 5.1 million that was set aside for that. And so this is something that you're unaware of, and maybe something that you can bring in your next discussion with the Secretary or OMB. So,
well, there's no discussion on exactly how it's going to be paid to the firefighters, but I know that on informal discussion, the governor's really adamant about trying to put some funds for the hard work that these guys do, especially COVID-related operation.
Because that's additional 25,000 on top of, so that's something that we want to also keep track of. And so, thank you. I now recognize Rep. Sheila.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here, and your leadership team. Thank you for your presence. I completely support DFEMS. Thank you for your service, being first line of defense, being our first responders, especially during this time. I have some questions, and I'm just going to get started and go down the list. I'd like to begin with personnel.
Only 3, ma'am.
I'll make 3 long ones. Okay, so the first one is in regards to personnel. We see a lot of shift happening here with the funding, and I'm just going to briefly describe it, and then you can go ahead and explain how this will impact the division. So under Saipan Division of Dispatch, we have a decrease of 196,000. This is just for personnel. The Division of Fire Prevention and Arson, a decrease of around 83,000. Saipan Division of Logistical Support, we have a decrease of almost 19,000. The Division of Fire Admin, a decrease of 90,000. This is all in personnel. But under the Saipan Division of Emergency Services, we have an increase of 496,000. So can you just explain how this will impact your department? These decreases are a result of the department's request and then the governor's response to it, which is a combination of local funding and the ARPA funding, okay? And so we see the decrease in all these different divisions, but a major increase in the Emergency Services Division.
So it's really simple. What we do is, because if we were to just try and break it down by business unit, it'd be a lot harder for us. So what they do is they just put it in our operational, and then when we pay personnel, we just shift those funds based on where the personnels are at. So during COVID, when austerity hit, we had to shift some of the staff from our personnel to our revolving funds just to make sure that we don't furlough anybody. When we shifted them back, not everybody fell where they were supposed to be because we went based on where the funds were at. So when we get this funding, what's going to happen is now we're going to have to shift everybody back to where they're at, and we're going to shift the funding too as well. But that's just a communication between the Secretary of Finance and myself.
Okay, and so what you're ultimately describing is reprogramming within your department. Are you aware that you have authority up to 25% to reprogram within your department? Yes? Okay. And so we just want to ensure that you're staying within that threshold of reprogramming funds, right? Because the approval must come from the budget, right? Okay, and so thank you for providing some insight in regards to that. Furthermore, in your budget, we do have a faculty ranking adjustment line item for around 29,000 that is not funded. Can you explain what that is? That does fall under the Saipan Division of Fire Prevention and Arson. The department requested around 29,000 and was not awarded anything. Can you explain what that?
It's the same as my initial statement, ma'am. I'm going to just shift the funds from the operational to the same.
Okay. What is that though? What is that line item? Faculty ranking adjustment.
Faculty ranking adjustment?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure actually. I don't.
Okay. I think just for clarification, you know, like, and to me, that just stands out because like I would think that is in regards to paying the personnel.
Absolutely.
Proper adjustments for their rank. But again, you know, because every department head is only given 25% of reprogramming authority, now would be a good time to line item these and fund these line items with this body, with this committee. Okay, and so thank you for that. Going back to equipment and infrastructure, can you give us an overview of your infrastructure, your locations on the island of Saipan, and possible needs?
So currently we have Station 1, Susupi, Station 2 up here in Yarapan. We got Station 3 up here in Capitol Hill. We got Station 4 in Kobler, 5 in Cagman, 6 in San Roque. As far as our infrastructure need, our biggest focus right now is shifting all the Delta personnel from Station 1 out. And I'm sure you guys are aware that we're starting to renovate a lot of building up here in Capitol Hill. And I'm just trying to get all our administrators out of the building so that the stations can be fully, you know, operational and just focus on emergency services rather than Delta personnel infringing on operation. So that's currently the focus. Station 6, San Roque, we're already working with Mr. Tom Liu, and there's an agreement to build a fire station. In exchange, you know, they're gonna take the old fire station, which is destroyed by Shorur. Station 4 is currently under FEMA. They're using it as a storage. I think the contract for that comes up in September, and we're gonna go ahead and renegotiate that and probably start getting our stations back up to par.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you elaborate on Station 6 in San Roque? I am also aware of the agreement between Saipan Globe and our government and the community benefit that they are contributing, right?
Yes.
For this fire station. What is the status on that? We are also aware that there's been a funding request to the SNILE local delegation to assist in the construction of this fire station. Can you also share with this committee where it is located or proposed to be
So-
located exactly?
The location should be right above Popo Beach. It's not too far across the old Fiesta. Camille's apartment. So that's the proposed site. We're looking at groundbreaking hopefully in December. That's the proposed timeline with Sutton Globe. We did write a letter because there was an agreement that, the delegation can help us fund the blueprint, which is the only thing delaying that project. I spoke to Ms. about that, and she was asking me to, see if I can get that through ARPA funds, but we just went ahead and wrote that letter a couple weeks ago, and I was just waiting on that pretty much.
Okay, well, ARPA funding is available for many different agencies and departments, right? And it would be a more, I think, sensible route to request for funding for this from ARPA. The local delegation, we do have local funding, but that is limited. It is not as big as the ARPA funding. So that would be my recommendation, and we do definitely support.
So you're supporting the 30,000 that we wrote, or do you want me to go through ARPA funding?
Well, you could try both, but I think ARPA funding would be almost a guarantee, and you can include that in your budget.
Okay.
If we're expecting a revised budget in July 1st, that would be something I'd like to see in that revised budget for DFEMS for the San Roque station. Okay, and so thank you for sharing that. Are you aware if there's current infrastructure that will support that fire station?
What do you mean by current?
Power, water, wastewater connection to that location across Camille's Garden? Only because as you move north, infrastructure tends to.
I'm not aware of any of it.
Okay. I will make note of that, and I'd also highly encourage that, if that were to be an issue, to be included in your budget request. Because after a certain point up at Marpy, power, water, wastewater, that infrastructure really is not supportive for development. So, okay. And at this time, Mr. Chairman, I yield to the other members. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Rep. Babalta. According to the submission and the proposal and the department's request, DFEMS is actually overfunded by 173,000. So, there's your 30,000, among other things.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we'll take back the 143,000.
Stay away from the 143,000.
Well, that's why I wanted to see if there's other additional requests that you have. Otherwise, we may have to share some of the funds, because one thing that the committee would like to do is to secure the 25% to the settlement fund. So if that's just overfunded, then if there's nothing else that you'd like to bring up to the committee, then that's something that the committee members will consider. Any other members? I recognize Rep. Lizama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering, because I believe once the fire department, you guys handle call center, is that still exist?
Call center as in the 911?
Yes.
We do have 911. It's co-located with the DPS's 911.
So that central is both,
Yes.
there's no revolving there.
None.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Lizama. Actually, there was one thing I wanted to point out under the department's request for utilities. Seems like the only requests for utilities came out of the logistical support. Does that division take care of all utilities?
Yes, they do.
And you average about 100 grand in utilities a year?
Yes.
So clarify, members, second round. For the first round, I recognize Rep. Selena Zavalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, how many vehicles are in your fleet, including emergency vehicles?
We have a total of 30.
And of that 30, how many are emergency responders, emergency response vehicles?
All the vehicles are. We use them as emergency responding vehicles.
They're all fully equipped with emergency equipment?
Different equipments for different vehicles, but they're all depending on mission. So some vehicles are used for rescue, some vehicles are used for just emergency when there's a 911 call. So depending on the mission, all the vehicles can respond.
Okay, how much does an ambulance cost, a fully equipped ambulance?
About 250,000.
And when is the next rotation? You said ambulances have a shelf life of 5 years, about?
So we're working on next year. So these guys, logistics division is already working on grants for next year to start replacing ambulance.
Okay, and one last question. Since you came on board, what were your priorities, and were you able to fulfill those priorities? Can you elaborate on that?
Sounds like my resume. But since I came on board, really my priority is really to just kind of move the Station 1 has been confined to the entire Delta. So it was really restricted for operational. So one of the major aspect of my plan is to just move out all of the Delta and explain this earlier. And then on top of that, try and get up to par with personnel, try and reach that threshold where we have emergency personnel at every station. And even if one calls in sick, we're not calling people in for overtime. Another goal that I have is the PPE. So we've been working on PPEs, and we've got about 80 PPEs. That's the bunker gear. And of course, I still need more, but it's a working progress because it's very expensive, it's very costly. Just restructuring the department and defining everybody's roles. That's one of my biggest mission when I came on board.
Were you able to accomplish any of those in the last year?
I have, actually. I've been really successful in creating policies, like for example, the division of fire prevention. We were successful with working with the AG and recreating our policies so we can eliminate a lot of these backlashes from the community. So EMS office is working on policies and procedures just to try and, because when the department became a department, we just kind of incorporated EPS's policies. So now we're trying to start creating policies where it's just specifically for the fire department.
Are you for now?
Thank you, Rep. Zavalta. For the second round, I recognize Representative Sheila Zavalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, we are all well aware of your department's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you just give us an overview of how that has impacted to your department, how that has impacted our firemen and our firewomen, and the mission of DFEMS?
So when you say our response to COVID, are you talking about how we responded to it, or how are we coping with COVID?
Well, let's start with how you've responded.
So COVID-19 is really not the fire department's mission. We just augment the task force based on personnel and their needs. We do work great together. There's been really no issue. As far as the fire department coping with COVID, I think we have 124 personnel that are really resilient, and they're still responding.
Do you have a counselor available for our firemen and women?
We work with systems of care, and normally when there's issues and people needing counseling, we refer them. But of course, we can't force them. They have to self-refer. But we let them know that that's available for them.
Right. Okay, well, at least, that resource is there. So,
Absolutely.
so thank you for that. And I'm very happy to hear about the policy updates and changes that you were able to implement. We all are aware that inefficient management practices are costly. And so that is one very effective way to implement long-term change. So thank you for, dedicating some time to improving the department that way. And so at this time, I would like to talk about the salary range of your department. I am looking at, a list of all the salaries from an administrative assistant to something to the tune of maybe 18,000, and some of our firefighters making like 20,000. Can you speak to the salary ranges and any plans or meetings with OPM in regards to the wage grade increase, within grade increase?
So we've submitted a within grade increase for everybody that's due for within grade increase. Now that's really just up to OPM if there's funding available. So we have, but I think a fireman one makes 22,000.
Okay.
And so forth, yeah.
And so do you have a current academy?
Yes,
ongoing right now?
not ongoing. We're in the process of starting one.
I see. And will the cadets be full-time?
It's going to be through WIA. 30 of them is going to be through WIA to start it off. So we're trying to avail through that program. 5 of them is through the OIA. Well, 16 of them is through the OIA.
Okay. Well,
that includes road and Tinian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're always supportive of collaborative efforts within our government. So thank you for taking advantage of the WIA opportunities. Okay. And so fire assists our community with a lot of community events and improvement projects. Thank you very much for your assistance with the Tamapec basketball court. Is that incorporated somewhere here in the budget, your community contribution?
No, because it's not really planned. It's normally when somebody needs help, we help them out. So we don't really incorporate that. The biggest resource that we use on that is really just water. So there's no overtime involved or additional resource really. But yeah, so it's based on needs. If somebody really needs it and we're available, we provide the service. But of course, our primary role is emergency, and some requests we don't entertain.
Understood. So clarified. Thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep. Babalta. I recognize Rep. Stafford.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad you asked about vehicles because it reminded me of something that was very, very important. And I wanted to know, since Sodalor and you two, how many additional water buffaloes have you guys added to your fleet? Or how many water buffaloes do you have on your fleet?
We don't have any water.
What do you call it then? Not a water buffalo.
Tanker? You're talking about a fire truck?
No, I guess like, for example, when we had the shelter and we run out of water, you guys bring a big water buffalo and you fill up the tank again.
No, that's FEMA, ma'am. If they need water and it's an emergency, we send the fire truck and we can fill it up through that. But for the most part, that was FEMA that was doing those big tankers. That's already in FEMA's position.
Okay. I guess I'll yield.
Thank you, Rep. Staffler, and I just want to recognize the presence of Representative Patrick St. Nicholas representing the island of Tinian. Rep. Denita.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Very simple. I don't know if someone asked already, but Um, um, like we are in the dry season already, right? Government is having rationing on water. I don't know about the other villages, but then if it comes to, fire and all those stuff, where do you get your water from?
From the hydrant,
Special-
ma'am. We just refill through the hydrant, the water hydrants along.
So it's non-stop, huh?
So it's not really an issue. Water.
Okay, so who maintains the fire hydrant? So you guys or CUC?
It's actually CUC. We just kind of partner up when they need our help. We help, but for the most part, the hydrant belongs to the CUC.
Okay. Yeah. And she brought up about the water buffalo, tanker, whatever. There are still people nowadays who still don't have water. Can we call on you to go fill their tanks? No, but that's.
If it's an emergency, and if it's an essential need, or
Yes.
somebody's life is impacted to a point where somebody might be hurt, then definitely call on us. But of course, our priority is emergency. So if there's a structure fire or if there's an emergency somewhere and there's a request that's made, sometimes we just, we respectfully decline to help just because of our mission, our essential mission.
Okay.
But
I'll just
you
have
can
to
call on
tell
us.
them to burn outside a little bit, so it can be an emergency.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Youngtimai. Any other member? I recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess for the second round, I was interested in hearing some statistics about the types of responses that you've done in the past year, particularly for like fire response, your fire code inspections, ambulance response, search and rescue. What does that look like for the past year? And did you have the resources that you needed to adequately respond to those events?
We do have the resources needed to respond to those. We saw an increase in ambulance response. We saw a decrease in, like, for example, we're in the dry season, but it's been raining heavily, so it actually kind of saved us this year. But for exact statistics, I can just have the Office of EMS just print those out and just give you guys a copy of that.
Okay, so you saw increases in ambulance. What about in?
I think there's more. A lot of people are just kind of more worried about, you start coming down with some kind of flu, some people freak out and think it's COVID, or so, some calls are, not really an emergency. It's more comforting for the fire department.
You just got more calls.
Yes.
For a response. I see. Okay. And what about like illegal burning? Do you respond a lot to complaints about that?
No, not too much. There's one under investigation. I can't really comment on it, but it might turn out into an illegal burning. Other than that, no, we did not see too much of illegal burning.
Okay, and then what about your fire code inspection activity? Has that been impacted pretty heavily? I noticed that collections dropped significantly in 2020.
So during COVID, that kind of, it was impacted significantly because we don't go out there and do inspection. We have to shut that division down for a few. But lately, these guys have been up and running, trying to catch up, and we're starting to get some collections, and some businesses are starting to open up and require a renewal on their fire code permit.
Okay, and on that note, do you have any businesses or other stakeholders, for that matter, that are currently paying the department for? Do you call it fire watch? Like I know
No.
IPI had something like that.
No, we don't.
No, so nobody's doing that anymore.
Nobody's doing
Did
that.
anybody
and I
do
won't
that
allow that.
besides IPI, or is that really the only instance where firefighters are being paid around the clock?
No, it's just like,
That was okay. Okay, all right. Okay, no, wait, sorry. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. For the second round, any other members? Okay, for the third round, going back. Let me just, we haven't heard from Rep. Patrick. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to first of all apologize for coming late for members. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for being here, and your employees. This is just in regards to the two municipalities, Rota and Tinian. do you need to deploy firefighters from both municipalities over to Saipan to help out in some ways?
So we don't need to deploy firefighters, but annually we send firefighters. We try and rotate Tinian and Rhoda through Saipan for OJT. We call it on-the-job training for evaluation. And then through this, what we do is we send a recommendation to the respective deputy commissioners on follow-on training, just to ensure that the standards are still kept due to the emergency is not as much as Saipan. So when we bring them here, we put them out on the ambulance, and we got instructors that are supervisors that follow them around and make sure that the standard is still kept.
And how are you addressing the 2R gear for PPE shortage for both municipalities, if there is?
So yes, Rhoda and Tinian are short PPE as well, but through our programs here where we're applying for grants, we are also including them. So we include the entire CNMI fire department when we apply for anything. The way we work here is if we order for Saipan, we also try and order for Tinian and Rhoda, just to ensure that we give the firefighters in the two municipalities the same treatment as well.
Okay, so my last question is for you, commissioners. I believe there's a DFEMS fire academy coming up.
Yes, sir.
And this academy that you're about to start, how will Rhoda and the Adam of Tinian living situation be supplemented?
So we had an agreement, living situation. We had an agreement with the two municipal mayors, and the living condition will pretty much, so the stipend will come from the municipalities. Traditionally, Saipan provides the housing and transportation. If you guys probably see when you drive in that we have a bus here that our logistics team were recently lucky to acquire from the PSS. And we're going to turn that into our training to shuttle cadets back and forth and try and keep the expense minimal. But yeah, so for the most part, the two municipalities mayor provides, or the deputies provide the stipend for their child, but then we provide the room and board pretty much, and transportation.
So when is the academy going to start?
Right now we just closed the opening. We're just going through agility testing. They're going to start interview next week. I'm hoping that by the end of the month we can start, if not beginning next month.
Thank you. Are you, Mr. Chairman? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rep. Patrick. So the bus out there, that's DFEMS bus.
Yes, sir.
Point clarification, because we thought there were field trips every day. So we didn't know it was
We will paint it, Mr. Chairman. We will paint it and put the DFEMS logo on it.
Thank you. I recognize Rep. Camacho for the second round.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome everybody. To be a fireman, what is the height requirement?
There is no height requirement, I can assure you that. You can make it if you're interested.
I yield, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. Second round, Rep. about the Selena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many fire hydrants are active here in Saipan?
We used to have that app. I can get back to you on that, man. Sufficient amount. So we don't really run into problems where hydrants are not working, but there are some in areas where the water pressure is lower. Yeah, so.
One other thing, I'd like to hear from each of your team here exactly what they do and what their priorities are, what their programs are.
I would love that as well, man. I've been talking here a whole hour already, so I don't mind giving these guys the opportunity to speak.
Please.
So I'll start off with the prevention division.
I mean, you're here to ask for money, right? If we don't hear from you directly,
Ask for money, guys.
we reserve the right to reprogram for you.
How do you operate this?
Where's the money?
This.
One other thing, by the way,
You're being recorded, just so you know.
Anyways, good afternoon. Kind of nervous right here. Anyways, I supervise the Division of Fire Prevention. We enforce the Public Law 11-56, that is the Sinabay Fire Safety Code.
Do you have any priorities for this fiscal year? Your boss is asking for a whole lot of money.
I believe our commissioner mentioned everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Juan. When you guys started talking about what do we do for use PP, I was gonna raise my hand, but when my boss was mentioning that we used to use gear for training, we did that in the past, but we recommend that we don't use that because of the carcinogen, the hazardous substances or materials that are involved. So it's kind of risking our people if we're gonna use those PPs for training. So I recommend that we dispose of it, because nowadays, especially the materials that are being made, it's all hazardous material. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Do you have any priorities or programs that you'd like to implement?
Right now, I'm glad that the commissioner was mentioning about the academy, because right now it's the manpower issue that we have. You know, we help each other out in our division, which we move people around, but at times too that, you know, if we are short, you know, I turn back to them and ask for the personnel, even though they are assigned on each division, but I ask for the manpower to assist the operations.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Congresswoman and Congressman. Thank you for inviting us today to this budget hearing, and hopefully everything's gonna be okay. Anyways, my name is Manuel Cabrera. I'm in charge for the logistic division. My priority is to procure, purchase, and repair. So my priority right now is the, like Commissioner mentioned earlier, is the PPE. That's the number one most important PPE or equipment for each firefighter. So it's costly, but it's protective. So I have under 5 people working under me. That's Lieutenant Zaran is my second command. So if any more further question, we can take it to our sidebars. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Bosses Muto. I run for the admin section. What we do is various payroll. We do administrative stuff, our PRs, POs, some PRs, travel arrangements. We make our own policies too, or update our policies. And answering your question for the hydrants, we have an app that I share with CUC, and roughly maybe 200 to 300, but they're not 100%, not all are working.
Thank you. John.
Good afternoon, all. Captain John Bloss. I'm in charge of the EMS office. I got 9 guys under me. 2 presently are assigned to the task force. Well, pretty much our office is dealing with grants, data collection, and billing. Also, I got instructors in there for to certify our guys and recertify them. CPR and EMTs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chairman, and the subcommittee city members. Thank you for having us here. And my name is Jay, and directly report to Captain Manny. He's division chief. And our priorities are many. We have fleet and facility responsibility, so we take care of all the fire stations around the island, as well as the support team and Luta. Then we have supply and equipment. We make sure all the firefighters get their PPEs, duty uniforms, medical supplies, station supplies we handle. And then we have a procurement office who runs contracts, ITVs, and manages all the accounts. And our priorities are a long list where we always plan for the futures, like procuring medics, fire trucks, wildland trucks, service trucks, and maintenance and preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question, Commissioner. Have you done a cost analysis? How much does it take to run an academy?
We did one. I had one of my administrative lieutenant do that. I believe to run an academy, not including personnel, it was, I believe, he came down with books and utilities and everything. We came down to like 87,000, I believe. I have that sheet, but I would have to go back and confirm that exactly.
And how are you funding this academy that's coming up?
It's through our revolving funds. So we were able to be successful to start this academy with our revolving funds. I think part of the success that we had was when COVID hit and our department was impacted funding-wise in our general funds. What we did was we just contained everything, stopped all projects, and kind of just saved money. And then as austerity was lifted, we had, revolving funds from last fiscal year that just kind of rolled over, and we were able to use those funds.
The 80,000 to run an academy, how many cadets are you looking at? Does that include their uniform, supplies?
Uniform and everything, yes. But not their salary. This is just the uniform. I'm talking about uniform. I'm talking about the facility, power, water, for the supplies, yep, for books.
For how many
50.
cadets? For 50, 50?
50, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ayo.
Thank you, Rep. Babalta. For the third round, I recognize first, third and final round, I recognize Rep. Lizama.
Thank you again, Chairman. This is my last question. Start the third round.
Okay.
But just out of curiosity, at one point in time, the fire lane was so busy, fire department was calling wreckers to come and pick those trucks or whatever part is for.
I'm glad you asked that question.
How come they're not enforced right now? And that they're shifted to another section. I'm not enforcing it. Why is it different now?
No,
where's that money?
It's not different. What we did was, of course, COVID kind of shut down all Garpan, so we didn't have to go out and enforce. When they came back, we did a lot of revitalizing, or we started painting over a lot of the red lines, right? So what we need to do before we start enforcing is we want to inform the general public of these new, the new areas that you can't park. So that's the Captain Stanley's working on that right now. Soon we will have a notification to our community that we're going to start enforcing it. So it's not that we're not enforcing it, it's just kind of COVID kind of just shut us down, changed our priorities.
I'm glad you're working on that, Commissioner. I believe that you should, my recommendation is that on those lanes that are marked as a fire agent, or fire lane, and there is no activities in that example, the Vista Resort, there's a lot of them parking on a red lane. Okay, so can you put something up so that okay to park? Because I go there, I want to park, but I'm scared. Oh, I get scared to park there because it might be ticketed or. So
yes, that's the plan. So that's the plan, and I'm just gonna say now, you guys just be ready for phone calls, because when we start towing people, I guarantee that you guys are gonna be getting phone calls now. Hey, I'm getting towed. So, but of course we will enforce that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Last one, Rep. Sheila Babalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, just so that we have a better understanding of the chain of command, the citizen-centric report does state that on the islands of Tinian and Rota, a resident deputy commissioner is appointed by the island's mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you just describe the chain of command there? So do they report to you? Or do
They report to the mayor for funding purposes, but under enforcement, they report to me. As far as promulgating rules and regulation, it has to come through the commissioner's office. But normally when they submit funding, it's included into the mayor's funding. So that's pretty much just the difference. But of course, they abide by the regulations that we promulgate up here in the central office.
So how do you ensure that there is cooperation just among, the different islands and with the structure because of that funding source coming from the outside, right? Do you have quarterly meetings? Do you have training together?
So we do some of the command teams, whether it be, for example, prevention office, they would go down when there's training requirement or to do inspection, to do quality assurance. So we do have those programs where we make sure that the respective municipality are abiding by the standards.
And then if there are needs for the municipalities, do they go to the mayor or do they go to you?
They go to the mayor, but they also come to me. So they're actually a little bit more fortunate because if the mayor can't cover it and it's an emergency or a real need, then we normally just offset that. For example, the fire truck is down. The mayor doesn't have any funds at the moment. Sometimes we send down logistics to just assess that, and if there's a real need, we provide the need.
Okay, I see. So clarified. And just because you mentioned, fire trucks, equipment, do we have adequate equipment to respond to structural fires? I know at one point the community was concerned about not having a fire truck large enough to respond to a fire if one occurred at the casino in Garpan. Is that still an issue that the department faces?
Through our enforcement program with the sprinkler system, and if these guys are applying or abiding by the regulation, then the issue of fire, regardless where it's at, is not so much of an issue. And we do have fire trucks to respond to those. We do have protocols and procedures, or we do have training and techniques to kill those fires, regardless where it's at, whether it's the 100 stories up or on the surface.
Because of the sprinkler systems
Yeah,
and the
because of the sprinkler
enforcement
system.
regulation. I got it. Okay, so clarified. Are you aware of the PFAS bill? It's also considered a forever chemical, and it actually will be discussed in today's Health and Welfare Committee meeting, but it is prevalent in firefighting foam. And it was once used here in the Sina mine. Are you aware if any of your firefighters may have been impacted by the chemicals?
I know the Attorney General was investigating that. They came to the department a couple months back, and they asked questions, especially with the seasoned firefighters, if they have any knowledge, if we stored it. But as far as our logistics, we never stored it. We never used it. So it's not really pertaining to us. I think ARF mainly is who uses that. ARF is who uses the foam.
I see. Okay, thank you. And my next question is in regards to vendors. Your citizen-centric report does state that the department is establishing a debt repayment plan and is working diligently with finance and OMB to ensure vendors are paid.
Yes.
How is that?
So we've been trying to follow up and make sure that our vendors are paid. So when we came on board, we were heavily in debt, I guess, the department, just because of austerity and everything. So what we did was we kind of just controlled our spending and just started forcing more payments on vendors. We're able to pay a lot of vendors thus far. Of course, I'm not 100%, but I'm still working on it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad to see that you even included it in your citizen-centric report. It's very important that our vendors get paid because the government is a large customer for many of our vendors on the island, and if we don't pay our vendors, then they don't pay their employees, and then they don't go shopping for their families and pay school supplies, things like that. So, it trickles down, and so we want to ensure that our government agencies are taking care of their vendor obligations. Okay, and my last question is in regards to your goal number 8 in your report, and that is to continue to identify, implement, and enforce procedures to ensure the workplace is free of violence and harassment while promoting unity. Can you just talk to us about how you are working on that
My
goal?
budget again,
Excuse me?
my goal. So
Yeah.
so what I do in the department is really just empower leaders. So, a lot of these division heads are responsible for their respective division, and then they recommend to me what the department needs. Then I go and look for resources. So, promoting unity is pretty much through empowering people, and that's pretty much what we do in the department. We trust in one another. I trust in their expertise and their recommendation to me.
Okay,
And I will
well, that's very
continue
good to
to do
hear.
that, yeah.
And HR related, anything is budget related because it is costly. When we have inefficient managers and leaders at the helm, when we invest in our people, in our government employees, we invest in their training, and then, no, I'm not stating that. I'm just sharing how this question is budget related. Because of HR relations, right? So, and this is not just for DFEMS.
I understand that.
Yeah, and it's not just for DFEMS. We ask these questions across the board. And so HR is really important, right? DFEMS that is just, our men and women are humans, and so we just need to make sure that we are properly investing in them. So, so thank you for sharing that. Empowering your team is very good to hear. And I yield, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Bavalta. One question. Rep. Camacho.
Thank you, Chair. Real quick question. Your NOPs, you have 147 total. Those are the active ones right now, right? Of these 127, how many are females?
We got 7 females. Yep.
Thank you.
Rep. Patrick?
Thank you, Chairman. I hope you have questions.
No, fire away. I do have.
I'm just curious if your firefighters getting paid off any hazardous or standby night differentials, all those?
No, they're not. I wish they were.
Really?
No.
Thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep. Patrick. I think that was one of the concerns that Commissioner brought up earlier during his opening. And just to close out, Rep. Bavalta brought up vendors. How much do you have in payables currently?
I would have to get that for you.
Do you have any ballpark amount?
Payables.
As of your most recent,
about 210,000.
All right, thank you for that. If the members have any questions that they weren't able to ask today, we'll go ahead and forward that to the department. Based on today's budget hearing, there are several questions in which you stated you'll get back to the committee. And so we'd appreciate if we can get that before the revised submission of the budget by July 1st.
Absolutely.
And so with that, members, we will close out at this time. I would like to, on behalf of the committee, Commissioner and your team, we'd like to extend our appreciation and gratitude to all the men and women in the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services. And if there's anything that we missed that maybe you're hoping we ask and you want to share, feel free to call my office anytime. At this time, members or Commissioner, if there's anything that you'd like to close out with?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for all the questions. I know you guys are all concerned about the department, and we will continue to do our part in ensuring that we carry out our mission to the best of our abilities. This funding The funding, of course, is always a battle every year. And, I ask for you guys' consideration when, deliberating for the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. And just one thing, I know I asked about overtime, and I just want to share with the members that based on at least the latest report that we received, DFEMS, their overtime expenditure comes out to about 100 grand, which is a fraction of what even the Department of Public Safety uses. And so if this is something that you've implemented to help reduce that cost, we appreciate your efforts. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that and let the members are aware. And so with that, members, we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is announcement. I do want to state that tomorrow, so yesterday we had our DPS's budget hearing and was recessed until tomorrow. I received a call this morning from Commissioner Guerrero that he has been on medical leave and he will be on leave for about 2 weeks. And so he had asked if we can reschedule rather than proceed with the meeting, because he will show up whenever that time is when he's available to come back into work. He called me and stated that he's actually working from home. And so with that, we'll just come back tomorrow at 12:30 to further recess, or if anything, adjourn and then schedule another meeting. That's all I have for you members. So we will still meet tomorrow at 12 to adjourn or extend the recess period. Any other announcements?
Ready?
All right. If there are none, again, thank you, Commissioner and your team. With that, can I get a motion for adjournment? Motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. This meeting is adjourned at 2:23 p.m. It was an emergency.
Emergency, say that.